All right, we got to get a little bit of use out of that New Year's Eve movie, New Year's Day movie. That's Emma the dog in the starring role as she got over her fear of the electric football game. I'm Barry. It's Wednesday at 7 p.m. That over there, that's Fred Greetham. He's the legend covering the Browns in Berea every day that they're open. How you doing, Fred?
I'm cold. I'm ready for vacation.
I hear you, man. I hear you. The cold is unrelenting here in Cleveland. My daughter traveled to Kansas City tonight. It's like 10 degrees there. It's even colder in Kansas City. It's ridiculous in the mid part of the country right now. Absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah,
But
winter.
yeah. What are you going to do about it, huh? But at any rate, we are back in our old time slot, Wednesday at 7 p.m. We'll stay here through the off season at least. And we welcome you to the show. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're here to talk about the Browns as they embark in their 2025 off season journey.
Trying to lose all our followers, keep like a shell game, Oh, when they on now? Guess the show time.
It's a test. It's a test of loyalty, Fred. We're testing to make sure that they are loyal to us and that they'll migrate with us to Wednesday at 7 p.m. So we know Gregory H. is loyal to us because he's in the chat room asking questions already. So thank you, Gregory, for hanging out with us. And if you are here as well, listening to the show, along with what our stats say, or at least 100 other people, the number rapidly mounting, please feel free to enter the chat room and ask us any questions or comments that are on your mind about the Cleveland Browns. This show is powered by your questions and comments, and we want to talk about what you want to talk about. That's the nature of this show. So please hit us up with your comments and questions. Give us something to talk about, and we will talk about what you want to discuss with the legend here, Fred Greetham. But Fred, obviously, the news of the week now is the press conferences by Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. The latter particularly on our minds since it was the most recent. Andrew Berry coming out and sort of saying that it's was an embarrassing season, and dropping the news that Deshaun Watson has suffered a setback in his recovery from the Achilles injury. So we'll get back into both of those comments. You had one question that you wanted to ask Kevin Stefanski in the wild media scrum for Andrew's attention there on Tuesday or Monday, whenever it was. What was your question that you wanted to ask Andrew Berry? I know you wrote an article about it today.
I forgot. It's been so. No, I did talk. I did get fired a few off to Stefanski. There wasn't as many people there, but no, to Andrew. I mean, I had a bunch of them, but the one I wrote about today, which I thought was kind of the most important question, none of my colleagues ask it. But I had a few false starts, as I wrote about it. It's kind of like, hey, and then it's whoever just keeps blithering on.
Yeah.
And I alluded to your famous newswire today, by the way.
I saw that. I commented on it in the,
okay.
In the thread.
But I mean, the gist of my question was, you're going into such an important off season. Do you have confidence that you'll get it right? Do you have confidence that, and not putting it all on him, but do you have confidence that your staff, would present it with everything, would make the right picks at number 2 or 33, which are the most important ones? The reason is because, in my research, he's had 37 picks in 5 years, and he's only has one Pro Bowler, and that's not the exact way to measure, but I think that's the highest award you can get, to at least think that they're a pretty good player. And that was JOK, who was an alternate last year. He's only this year they had 9 players recognized in the Pro Bowl, and 3 of them made the Pro Bowl, and then they have 6 as alternates, which a lot of times end up making it, and then they count them as Pro Bowlers. But anyway, 9 of them. But if you look at those 9 you'd think are probably your best players on your team.
Right.
And only 3 of them Barry and his group brought in. That means 6 of them were here before he got here. The 3 that made it that he had brought in was the punter, who was a free agent, JOK, who was the only draft pick, and Jerry Jeudy, who he traded for.
Right.
Everybody else was here before. So that was the gist of my question. No disrespect, but I wanted to know, how are you going to answer that? Are you confident you'll get it right in such a big, draft offseason? And as I wrote about today, I actually think he's been best at trades and free agency. First of all, because Jimmy Haslam has allowed him kind of like to spend almost unlimitedly money. And if you have the cash to spend, that can bail you out of a lot of mistakes. Look at the New York Yankees. I mean,
right.
They go get the best guy, and if he doesn't turn out to be the best guy, they just throw him away and get another one until they get it right. It's not quite like that in the NFL, but my point is, okay, trades, you and I could make good trades, Barry, because we can watch a game on Sunday, over the years and say, that guy's really, really good. Like a Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper. If all it costs is absorbing the guy's contract and you have an owner that will do that, I could say, hey, all I got to come up with was, what will you take for this move? A 5th round, a 6th round. Okay. So he's been good at that. And he's been good at free agents at a lot of them, but he's missed on some too. The safeties, he hasn't really hit on John Johnson and Juan Thornhill, guys I thought were good moves at the time.
Right.
Austin Hooper. So free agency and trades, to me, that comes first. Go out there and go at it. And then by the time you get to the draft, you still got to hit on the draft, but you don't have to, oh my goodness, if you don't hit on this, on all 11 picks, the team's going to be shot, in another 3-14 season. They got to hit on the top 2 for sure. But that's a lot easier. Even if I was doing it, I could read every expert out there and form a consensus. This would be probably the most logical pick to make at number 2. So that's kind of my point. And that was my point of my question. You're not going to get a great answer. He's not going to say, we really sucked. We picked all the wrong guys. And I'm not saying that, but when you gauge 37 picks, only, I would say, 7 to 10 were solid. And that's not really a ringing endorsement. I almost use starters as the gauge, but as somebody pointed out, when you're 3-14, starters don't mean a whole lot. But at least they were playing. They might not be the greatest. So anyway, that was the point of that. Don't know what you think about it, but as far as that's the, and if you haven't read that, check that out. It's on the front page, starting to fall down a little bit there, but you can get your opinion in there, make a comment or two.
Yeah, you definitely have to scroll down the OBR front page these days because there's so much content. You can't just look at the top story anymore. You have to scroll down because we're pumping out a lot of content, a lot of stories on the front page of the OBR these days. In addition, if you have an opinion on Andrew Berry's drafting skills, stay tuned for tomorrow morning. Jack Duffin's going to have a piece on sort of objectively objectively looking at the track record of Andrew Berry in the draft. So may have some unusual conclusions there. that you can take a look at. We've already got some questions, so let's just wind our way into those to sort of kick things off. Gregory H has loaded us up here with a few, and let's pick one of those. And he starts with, if we were to draft a quarterback, let's say in the third round, what veteran do you think we should bring in to sit behind, for him to sit behind, or do you keep Jameis? Anyone spring to mind, Fred?
Well, I mean, I'm going to do a little projection on this stuff as we sit here, January, whatever it is, 7th, 8th, in the next few days. But right now, I mean, I really think if you want to have a chance to win next year, I think you need to have an established quarterback. This team could have won 3, 4, 5, 6 more games, I think, if they would have just had adequate quarterback play. Team started 1-6, mainly because the coaching staff or whoever did not change the quarterback and they let them bury their season. We saw what just adequate quarterback play could do to the offense, but it was too late by then. I mean, when you're
Right.
1-6, the season is over. I don't know, everybody knows that. And Jameis Winston, moved the ball, was similar to Flacco. You saw, a chance there with the team, gave him a chance to win. But by then, the defenses started to fall off. I think a lot of it was starting to feel like, okay, we don't really have a chance anymore. And guys like Zadarius Smith, who's flourishing up in Detroit now because he's got a shot at the Super Bowl, they started looking around and saying, well, I don't know, wait till next year. This isn't going to happen. So, right now, as of this date, the best option that I'm aware of is Kirk Cousins, assuming he gets released. I don't know who's all going to be available. I mean, if I had a choice, between Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, if Derek Carr gets released, I'd take Derek Carr. I like Derek Carr before they got Deshaun Watson. It's like he's always played well against the Browns. There's a lot of guys out there that aren't looked at as being the greatest. Russell Wilson was being, thrown around even when he was in Seattle, and he's done pretty well since. But it seems like a Derek Carr could be the type of guy, that could turn things around for you next year. If you want to have a chance to compete, if you want to sell it to Myles Garrett, I don't know if you could sell a rookie or, on a third round draft pick quarterback or a second round draft pick. I mean, if I was looking right now, and I don't know who the number one pick is going to be, but if I had my choice at the best quarterback in the draft, I would take Cam Ward and I would take like a Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins and truly let the guy sit and work his way, learn, and not be thrown into the fire. A few years ago when Baker Mayfield was a rookie, I was on the radio locally. I was filling in for somebody, and the host was Mike Trevisano on WTN. He turned to me and he said, the Browns ruin every quarterback, and he was ranting about it. And I made this statement. I said, I've watched training camp and I've watched everything, and I've seen the Browns throw quarterback after quarterback out there before they were ready, and they were thrown to the wolves. And this year they have a rookie, and it was Mayfield, that he is the first one I've seen that is ready to go right now. And yet their plan is to have him sit the whole year. And it was, we all know that in the third game, Tyrod Taylor got injured and Mayfield went in, and the rest was history, from that. But he shot out of the gate as a rookie. I thought he was ready to go. There's not too many guys ready to go. I don't know about rookie quarterbacks coming in, but just what I can gather, I don't know if they're all ready to start in the NFL right now. But they are great. But I would think you'd have a much better chance if you can find a veteran that can step in and really get back to running Stefanski's, wide zone scheme, running the ball, dominating the clock with a good running game, and using the play action pass as you did with Baker Mayfield and you did with, Jacoby Brissett, and even Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
You eliminate the turnovers. You eliminate 23 interceptions and cut that down to a reasonable number, under 10 for sure. The team wins games just on that with good, solid defense and special teams. And so I think you can correct, your deficiencies on defense and special teams, but you get a quarterback, take care of the ball, can run Stefanski's offense, and that's Kirk Cousins. And I think Derek Carr could be like that as well if those guys are available.
Yeah, if you are a OBR VIP subscriber, and you should be, there's a analysis in Ask the Insiders from the previously named Jack Duffin about Derek Carr in his salary situation and whether he would be a post or pre June 1st cut. That's pretty informative. So check it out if you're a VIP subscriber. Comment from Trey. Trey says, I hope we don't draft a QB at 2. Now, there's a school of thought out there, Fred, that Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders are, your top rated quarterbacks, but in previous years, they would have been quarterback 7 or 8, whatever off the board last year or whatever, and that neither are worthy of those top 2 picks. Do you ascribe to that, or do you think that the Browns should, look at those quarterbacks, but look at them in sort of a trade down scenario? Or are you ready to make that determination?
Well, over the years, what I've learned is these quarterbacks always get overvalued. And I know last year there were 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12. Bo Nix, I think, was taken 12th. And I was listening to a pretty prominent draft guy today, and he said that Ward and Sanders and his evaluations would come in maybe right behind Bo Nix. So maybe if that was over this year, maybe they'd be 13, 14, 15 in the ranking of players overall. Right. And it doesn't sound that great, but then again, if you could get somebody that's right about like Bo Nix to step in, I think that'd be pretty good. Now, I was surprised this particular individual said Sanders is closer to the type of quarterback to run Stefanski's offense than Cam Ward. Mm-hmm. And that's about the opposite that I assumed. And so that's a little bit interesting, but you don't pay me millions of dollars to make these decisions. Jimmy Haslam pays those guys that kind of money, and they got to know those things, and whoever fits the best. And if it isn't, I'm not for you take one just to take one. But if Cam Ward or Sanders, they feel either one of them can really solidify the quarterback room long term. Like I said, they don't have to be thrown right in this year. You can and we'll know before the draft if they've been able to acquire a quarterback, and they won't have to draft one to be a starter. We don't know that until free agency and all that kind of gets taken care of. But no, if you have one you really believe is the guy, take him. And then still have the veteran. I think, the Falcons got criticized a lot, but they went in big time to get Kirk Cousins. And then they turned around and said, Michael Penix is the guy we've been waiting for our whole life. They knew that they had a limited time with Cousins, and they went out and got the quarterback anyway. And so I don't see a problem if you make the move and you get who you think can be that guy. And if the quarterback, you can still get the guy you want, then take him. I don't like this, we wait till next year and hope. Because I've seen so many times that the class of the next year is supposed to be so great, and by the time you get there, the guys they were talking about aren't even mentioned anymore. There was a guy from USC, I think his name was Matt Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, they said next year this guy will be the number one pick in the draft, no question, the best quarterback ever. And I think by the time it got there, he went in the 4th round and never really even played. So
yeah,
you just gotta. It's a crapshoot, to be honest. We know that. If it was that much easier, the Browns wouldn't have had 40 different starters. I mean, the sheer numbers of having 40 guys that one of them wasn't good. I mean, you look back at that list, other than Baker Mayfield, there's really nobody on that list that was with the Browns that left and went on to be great. I mean, most of them never played again, even all the first rounders. So it is, and it's not just one regime. It's like a lot of regimes missed on these guys. So, if you really believe in somebody, then you do it. I'm more of a top of the draft type of guy. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to hope I get this guy in the 5th round and hope because I really think he can be developed into being the greatest thing ever. Well, the only guy I've heard about really needs time to develop is Jalen Milroe. And if you think you can get a guy this year that can, a veteran, solid veteran, whether it's a trade or free agent, and you want to take him with, your second pick at 33 or whatever, okay, that's fine. But for the most part, I feel like you got to get him at the top of the draft. I mean, say what you will, back even when the Browns went for Mayfield, Rosen was a bust, but Josh Allen was pretty darn good. Lamar Jackson was pretty darn good. And we're seeing now even Sam Darnold's pretty darn good, as well as Mayfield. So where do they come? Top of the draft, except Lamar Jackson. Everybody missed on him, except Baltimore.
Of course. Kelly Black with a comment. If you go with Cousins or Carr, you need a second option. Actually, that's not the one I wanted to read. I'm going to click the other one. She said, hey, guys, I heard a suggestion about maybe hiring an outside consultant to help with the draft, especially QB. What are your thoughts? So what about bringing in a specialist? Is there a specialist out there who can solve our quarterback problems, or is there someone within the organization we should be relying on?
Well, I don't know if he's referring to me or the story I wrote. I'll just assume he is because I mentioned that in my story. I didn't have anybody specific, but there's got to be retired. Oh, just for example, say the guy the Titans, today, Rand Carfin. I don't even know his background, but say, for example, he was a quarterback genius. He might have drafted Will Levis and might not know anything about it. So forget the name, but a guy like that, a GM that you look at their track record and they really drafted well at quarterback.
Right.
Pick up the phone or bring them in and say, what do you think?
Right.
I don't know if there is those guys because, look at the 2018, they were all over the board. Baker Mayfield, you heard he's too short and this and that. And Allen, he's erratic. And, were the Bills that smart, or was Josh Allen the only guy left, so they took him. There's a lot of luck involved in it, but I'm saying there's a lot of experts out there. I get as much information as you possibly can on these guys,
Right.
And it is come down to the situation. And I think what you could make it easy on whoever you bring in is to go back to a big time running game. They were top 5 in the NFL, in the running game. Now I know Nick Chubb was a big part of that. And without him, they dropped to 12th last year and this year to the bottom. They were like 30th or something, 94 a game. Well, if you go back to your wide zone, I think your numbers will go up just because the offensive line knows what they're doing. They're built for that. But I think you can add a running back, even if Nick Chubb can't come back, that can really help you have a top tier running game. And if you have a top tier running game, I think it's going to make your quarterback, especially a veteran, look better.
Mm.
And I'll go out on a limb here. And I wrote this before. I think Jameis Winston with a top level running game would have been a much better, situation here, because
Sure.
what I pointed out when he was with New Orleans, he threw 3 interceptions and had 14 touchdowns in his 7 starts to open that season when he took over for Drew Brees. And I asked him, said, why was your number so good? 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The team was 5-2. He said, we had a great running game. I didn't have to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. If you have Jameis Winston throw the ball 40, 50 times a game, you know what you're going to get. Why not, control that situation, hand the ball off, and when you need to throw, you got a great play action guy there. And he can throw it away because they're moving the ball and stuff. So whether it's Winston or somebody else, I think Kirk Cousins didn't have that going this year when he had such a bad year. He had some of his best years with Stefanski. That's why I think, as bad as he was this year, he would be a good fit. I think they would be able to resurrect him with a good running game. Same thing with Derek Carr or whoever.
Let's talk about another scenario in the draft. This comes from Fumble 13. He says, optimal, trade with the Giants, pick up another 3 this year, 4 next year, and at 3 take Abdul Carter. DeAndre Black, earlier in the chat, was also an advocate of Abdul Carter. A lot of people love this guy. Giving you a pass rusher on the other end of the defensive line away from Myles Garrett would be very, very scary. If you got a guy like Kirk Cousins who can just take care of the ball, you restore your running attack, you got a pass rush like that, that's a very potent team to put on the field, don't you think, Fred?
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of needs in there. I mean, a lot of times rookies don't make that big of an impact, in their first year at certain positions. Edge rusher, I think, is one that you can. Defensive lineman, Mason Graham from Michigan. I mean, I'm not against trading down if you can get one of those guys, but I do not want you to trade, past whatever the blue chip number is. Usually it's about 5.
Right.
I don't want to go out of that and then you're just getting a guy, I don't even know if you could hold somebody hostage, say the Raiders hire Deion Sanders to be their coach, and he wants his son to be the quarterback, and I think the Raiders are number 6. I think you could probably extract just about whatever you wanted, for them to move up to 2. If you could get, what I would like is you to get one of them, blue chips and another first round pick, so you can get 2 starters to come right in this year. I don't know what all the charts say and everything, but if somebody's desperate, you might be able to get more out of it. But again, I go back to, you don't want to be drafting in the top 5 again, and that's usually where you have to be to get a franchise quarterback. In fact, this year, if Cam Ward is the franchise quarterback, say he's the only good one that really is a franchise quarterback, or Sanders, one of them, say only one of them is, you had to be the first pick to get him, right? Mm-hmm. So even if the team up there, which I think will take a quarterback, wasn't going to take a quarterback, somebody would trade to try to get up to take a quarterback. That's just how it is. Just like we saw last year, 6 out of 12 picks were quarterbacks. So I'm just saying, if you really like a guy, he's your guy, then go. And you could almost make a case to just start drafting them every year and hope you hit on one, because until you do, you're going to be in the same boat year after year. And I'm not saying the top pick in the draft. you're going to be 7-10, 8-9, 9-8. You're not going to be a threat to go all the way until you have the quarterback position solidified. I think if you look at last year with Washington, they went from a 4-13, had the number 2 pick in the draft, and Andrew Berry, pointed this out. They're now in the playoffs, and what was the big difference? They did get a new coach, but they had a quarterback who played like a rookie of the year, and the same thing with Denver, quarterback who played like rookie of the year, and both those teams are in the playoffs. So this roster has players. I just think that you just got to have a quarterback that can take them, to that level. And we talked about it here. Why not get a quarterback that Kevin Stefanski wants to work with, likes, and works best in his type system? Not, somebody we're going to try to work around. And the last thing I'll say there, Jack Conklin, I don't know if you heard the comment the other day when we talked to him. He said the elephant in the room that nobody's said all year. He said, we cannot develop an offense around one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they did.
Clear.
And that's why it fell apart. Because when first of all, the one guy didn't do what you were expecting. But second of all, then he got hurt. Even if it would have been working great, when he got hurt, it would have been all over because you developed it all around one guy.
To me, that's the answer to Kelly's question earlier, right? About bringing in a consultant. I think you already got your consultant. His name is Kevin Stefanski, right? You go to Kevin Stefanski. Does Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, is he the guy to run your offense, right? Do you want to spend the number 1, your first round pick on either one of those guys? Do either one of them, do you have to have them to run your offense? Are they the guy to run your offense? If no, then maybe you can trade back a spot or two. I don't know if you want to trade back to number 6 because I think you still want to be able to get Abdul Carter or Mason Graham, and I'm nervous about whether those guys will still be there at 6. But you can trade back 1 or 2 spots perhaps, and get one of those defenders that you like. If Stefanski says, no, I don't think that those guys are the magic, franchise quarterback that we need at spots 1 or 2. But like you said, Fred, if Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is the guy, according to Stefanski, then get him. Pick up that guy. And even if you have to make a deal to get number 1 in order to get Cam Ward, if Stefanski's convinced that that's the guy, pay the price to get the guy. I know a lot of people in the chat are very skeptical about those 2 quarterbacks, and I don't blame them. But I would rely on the experts in this case.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I said. Even if they're not like last year would have been around the Bo Nix area, that's still a pretty good pickup. I think most people would take Bo Nix now as their quarterback if that's, where these guys were on that level. I mean, played a lot of college and so forth, but I don't know. I mean, as far as that's what I said, you can have so many opinions on the thing. We studied this like crazy. And I was convinced coming out that Sam Darnold was the guy that I wanted the Browns to take, when they took Mayfield. I like Josh Allen, but I just thought that, wow, he played at Wyoming. I saw that 50%, and what I'm saying is all the experts were all over the board on it. And so you just have to, like I said, that's what you get paid for. You got to get it right. Barry's not had a chance to draft a quarterback if that's the direction he's going to go. Now, he threw in the other day trading down, and he likes to do that. So I'm sure that's on the board. But I agree with you. They have a lot of needs. But if trading down just means you pick up another 3rd round or something, that doesn't interest me. I want first round type guys. I want top 10 type guys.
Right.
Top 5 type guys, that can change. You can say, Myles Garrett. There was no question he was, the best defensive player in that draft. when you look back, you say maybe that's great, but it'd been nice to have Patrick Mahomes instead, because Myles Garrett's not winning you championships. The quarterback has won 2 of them. So, yeah, they just have to do all the due diligence and come to the conclusion. I think you got to have Stefanski, and maybe he has been heavy in these things. Baker Mayfield was here when they arrived. The closest we had with Andrew Berry was he was on the staff, with Sashi Brown when they passed up Mahomes and they passed up on Deshaun Watson when he was really good. And nobody will answer what would he have done if he was in charge. Nobody will answer that, so you don't really know. It's easy in hindsight, but I would have really liked to know what he would have done if he was sitting in the big chair. He's got 5 years, 4 years experience, 5 years experience now. You would hope you would realize you got to get this right. You got to turn over every stone and get it right. And, just to trade down, I don't know about that. If you're convinced, let's say Drew Aller plays well for Penn State and he decides, boy, the Browns really might like me. I'm from Medina. And then he's going to declare, is that a guy that they say needs more time, but he's 6'5" and big arm, all that? Well, there you go. There's where you bring in your veteran, let him play a year, develop a guy like that. So,
right.
I just think they no matter what they do, you just got to get it right, and you look at it a little with a jaundiced eye, because you think it's these guys that made the determination that we're going to trade everything away and do everything we can to get Deshaun Watson, and we've seen how that's turned out.
Well, Drew Aller declares, what you do with him is you sit him for a year and you get him working out on the core home fitness, because that's what he needs. Bulk up a little bit, get him to corehomefitness.com, where he can check out their assortment of lifting equipment and their top-rated adjustable dumbbells, the best that are available on the market by the New York Times and Men's Health, also rated a best buy by Consumers Report. If you check out corehomefitness.com, you're going to see this new array of videos and instructional videos and training programs that they've come out with on that site that will really help you crush your goals in 2025. Really some excellent information on corehomefitness.com. If you order the equipment, you'll discover that they have a US-based support team, fast shipping, hassle-free returns, you name it. These guys know what they're doing. They are the best in this particular business, and they have stepped up to sponsor the OBR. They're one of the reasons that we can bring you this programming every single night, every single weeknight here on the OBR. Thank you to Core Home Fitness and corehomefitness.com very much for sponsoring the OBR and hopefully making Drew Aller the quarterback that we know he can be. All right, we still got some questions here. We got about 20 minutes. Let's get to them. From Gregory H. Talking about the offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees and Clint Kubiak are two of the names that we've heard, Fred. Gregory H. here says, if you had the choice, I know both are very sought after, and I'm not sure that Kubiak is even an option, but what are your thoughts on either as the offensive coordinator, Fred? Obviously, Tommy has had some experience here in Cleveland with the background in college at Alabama. Kubiak, obviously, from the NFL background. Any particular thoughts on which you think might be more appropriate for the Browns?
Well, I've heard good things about Tommy Rees, and, obviously he was on the staff. To me, it's a hard sell when you're 3-14 to just bring back your tight ends coach and make him offensive coordinator. But I think that he's highly thought of, and he's probably going to go with Mike Vrabel if he doesn't get a promotion. He might go to Mike Vrabel to be the offensive coordinator, anyway. But if you think he's the guy, then you have him in house. You don't let him leave. But Kubiak is, I think, the son of Gary Kubiak, who was Kevin Stefanski's mentor. So this would be, I saw what he did to the Browns. I think he was running the Saints offense down there. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I mean, if I had the choice, I would probably take somebody that's done it a little bit more, but I don't have a problem either way. As far as if they keep Reese. I mean, it just seems, isn't it strange that you're 3-14 and that that somebody else wants your guys. That's kind of strange to me. But I've heard a lot of good things. He was an offensive coordinator at Alabama. Obviously, it's a big difference between the NFL and college, but
Right.
he was here. I know Stefanski talked about him a lot when asked how highly they think of him. So I would not be surprised if what the reports say that he becomes the offensive coordinator, regardless if Kubiak's available or not. But if Reese is going to go with Vrabel wherever, and he may want to, and the only way the Browns would be able to keep him is offensive coordinator, and if that's what they want to do, then that's probably what they want to do. But I don't think they're going to be able to retain him at his current position. He's probably going to go join another staff. I've heard a lot with Vrabel, somewhere.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is that these guys have to want to come here, right? Have to want to stay here. And there's like this, as Jeff Lloyd put it on the show before ours, Browns 3D, there's a big mystery at the quarterback position, right? I mean, if you're committing to be offensive coordinator of the Browns, you're committing to, work with, this mystery, this big question mark at quarterback. That's taking quite a leap of faith on the Browns. But also, I mean, they just went out and picked the offensive line coach. So you've already got the coaching staff that you're going to work with as the offensive coordinator. You can't bring in your people. So I'm not sure it's necessarily the ultimate gig in the world for a highly sought after offensive coordinator. But
well, let me just throw this out. I don't believe it's going to be a big name offensive coordinator anyway, because if you're a bigger name offensive coordinator, meaning you were a head coach that got fired, now you're kind of back to offensive coordinator, moving back up, they want to call the plays. I mean, to me, and I'm not in the business, but the marquee part of being offensive coordinator is calling the plays. I cannot believe Alex Van Pelt was here 4 years and didn't call the plays. He was happy just being the offensive coordinator. So maybe, he got fired by the Patriots. If he wanted to come back, that's a guy that obviously has been here and didn't call the plays. And maybe a first-time coordinator like Reese would take that promotion without calling the plays, because he's not in a position to leverage, to say, oh, I'm not taking it unless I'm calling the plays. He's just happy to get that position. And I don't know what Kubiak, would think, if he's not calling the plays now. I don't know how it works with the Saints, but I would think that he would want to be calling the plays. Most guys coming here, that's what they want to do. I don't think Ken Dorsey, he was unemployed, so he wasn't going to be demanding that he got to call the plays, and he didn't until midway through the season.
Right. Let's see here from Bradley on our comments on Allar. He says Allar is intriguing. At least he would be a scheme fit with Stefanski. Also, yes, he needs time to develop. He certainly does. And he said, I wouldn't be comfortable committing to Allar with the second overall pick, though, which I also agree with. I think that would definitely be a trade down or later round sort of scenario for the Cleveland Browns. JDB says, I would try to pick up Cousins cheap and try to get Zach Wilson from the Broncos. Any thoughts on that, Fred? Perhaps rather than taking a rookie, you get a young bust from the Broncos and see if you can't Sam Darnold him, so to speak.
Well, I'm already said I'm on board with Cousins. You're going to get him cheap. You're going to get a Russell Wilson type deal where the Falcons are going to have to pay the freight. And so you're going to get him for like 1.1 million or something like that because they pay the difference. Like when the Broncos moved on from Russell Wilson, Steelers got him for the minimum 1.1 million. The Broncos are paying the rest. So there's very little risk there. He's on the end of his career, but I think that I don't know how sought after he would be after the season he had this year. I think he got benched because he was playing so horrible, but I don't think he's that bad. In Stefanski's offense, I think you could sell him on kind of revitalizing back, jump start, getting a brand new fresh start. And you sell him on like we talked about, the play action and those type things that he didn't have there. So, yeah, I think that Cousins then second quarterback, if you want to take a flyer on him. I mean, the thing is, at this time last year, if you would have said you guys could get, instead of Jameis Winston, Sam Darnold, I would have said I'd rather have Winston because it's easy now to say, oh, Sam Darnold. Well, I don't know. Until Zach Wilson becomes like a Sam Darnold, I don't know, where he's at. Sometimes these guys all of a sudden get it. And what is it? Is it because Justin Jefferson's there? Because Aaron Jones, great running game, good offensive line? He's in a nice fit. And O'Connell has done the best with him. And that's what I keep believing, that Stefanski can work with a guy that he can look at. He ought to be able to identify, this is the type of guy that works well in my system. Mm-hmm. And I think he must have felt that way about Jameis Winston, and that's why they went that route as opposed to bring Flacco back for other obvious reasons. But I don't know. Either they soured on him or they just didn't want to win the last 2 or 3 games, because you cannot, this is a sidebar, you cannot tell me that DTR or Bailey Zappi gave them the best chance to win. I don't think they wanted to win the last 3 games, because they went right back to almost Deshaun Watson level offense again.
Yeah, they certainly did. Sarah writes in, does the new O-line coordinator entice Batonio back, and do we keep Teller? I assume he means Teller and Conklin. Interesting question. What did Batonio sound like when the Browns were exiting? Did he sound like he was thinking about coming back, or did he get any read on that?
He was selling harder because he was at the podium. Conklin was just over at his locker. Batonio was one of the official. You can listen to his interview, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I have a bunch of clips up on my, whatever it's called, my X site. Yeah. He was selling hard the wide zone, the Bill Callahan, style. And more so Stefanski going back to what he's comfortable with, the play action pass and the old offense. And he sounded rejuvenated, kind of selling it, Mm-hmm. And Conklin the same way. And they said, we're built for that. All of us, Wyatt, me, Conklin, Posick. So 4 of the 5 are that type of and we know it, everything there. Oh, I think he definitely will be back. In fact, the new coach today is a disciple of Bill Callahan. He worked with him 7 years, and that tells me that's what they're going to go back to, their roots. Conklin said, oh, he'll be at home maybe a couple weeks, a month, and he'll be back. He's not retiring, and I have to think these guys talk a lot.
Right.
Plus, Barry, even if I don't care how badly you want to go to the beach next year, if I said, Barry, one more year and I'll give you 15 million, I think you'd wait. And I think that's what his contract is for next year.
Right. Can eke out another year for 15 million.
I mean, you never have enough,
Mm.
I'm sure these guys, when it comes down to it, it's not like a million's a million. If they say, if you play one more game and give you another $1 million, I think you'd do it. There's there is some of that. And I think he played pretty well. I think he would like to play in that zone. He kind of went on and on how he didn't even get to pull this year or do anything like he used to do. Or he said very few times, and he used to do it 6, 8, 10 times a game. I think he'll be rejuvenated. And I think they probably already told him that's kind of what we're going to go back to. But no, I think that's what this line. Now the question is just age. Do you, are you able to, do you feel like they can still play at a high enough level, to bring them back? But that would solve some of your problems, at least for now, if your offensive line is pretty much intact.
Yeah, it certainly would. And going back to a scheme that they're more comfortable with. Gregory H asks, do you see them going back to Greenbrier this year? Do you see him changing things up in the preseason?
No. I had a high source say, they went back because they were 11-6 and they just had a lot of vibes on the chemistry. When you're 3-14, I mean, even back then, somebody said if they have a horrible year, they won't be back. So I would be extremely surprised if they went back there after a 3-14 season. That's no small feat. It's a couple million, I heard, just to move it over there for a week or so, because you got to take the whole operation. You think you have high tech computers and stuff. They take all that stuff down there.
Mm.
Mobile training camp. No, I think what they would do, I think this last year Minnesota came here. I think this year they'll go up to Minnesota, to training camp. He might even do 2 training camp joints or something, but they are doing a lot of the remodeling they're starting to build that new campus this spring. So training camp field there might be all torn up again. So I don't know what all they're going to do, but maybe they will go to Greenbrier, but I don't think so from what I've heard.
Whatever they do, it will maximize inconvenience for fans attempting to watch training camp. I'm pretty sure of that after the performance this year. Another from Gregory H. Are there any things you've heard about JOK or Tillman? Certainly there was some discussion about JOK during the 2 recent press conferences. None of it very reassuring, if I remember correctly, Fred.
Stefanski finally said, well, you think he'll play next year? He said, I'm hopeful. And Barry said kind of the same thing, and none of them came out and said, yeah, we think we're pretty optimistic by next year he'll be ready. They just keep talking about going around seeing doctors. So anytime you have somebody going around to see doctors, it sounds like you're getting 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th opinion saying, what should we do? What do we do? So I don't know. It's really the strangest thing. I haven't seen him. I mean, immediately after the next day, he posted, I'm okay, or I'm fine, or something. So you kind of thought, well, will he miss a couple weeks? And then Stefanski said, well, I'm going to rule him out this week. And then, well, I'm going to rule him out this week. And then it's like, okay, we stopped asking, just say he's not going to play this year. I don't know. I mean, I get it that it's health and all, but man, I think you could be a little honest saying, no, it's a real serious injury and it will be. The most information I got was in Jordan Hicks, and he probably got reprimanded for it. Somebody asked him and he said, well, we're all praying for a miracle recovery. So that doesn't sound good, you
No, it
know.
doesn't. No.
I don't know, if how dramatic he was being, but that was like the week after the injury. So I think, I'm hopeful that it's different. The other thing is, well, in Tillman, I've never seen a guy I think it was since that Steelers game in the snow that he got the concussion. He practiced every week. He was out there, and every week he was inactive, and that means he never cleared the concussion protocol. I don't understand how the concussion protocol works. I mean, I thought the last step was you practiced, and that means then the next day they usually say, okay, they've been cleared, because you practice and then they look at your charts. But evidently, after practicing, he never got back to the baseline chart of what it was to be normal for him. So I read something, I think today, that he's still experiencing some headaches a couple, 6-8 weeks later. So that's not the greatest. But Stefanski did say with him, he expects him to be 100% fine. That the one thing about injury, as well as I know, how little they give injury information.
Right.
So that Andrew Berry was chomping at the bit to dump that Deshaun Watson injury news because, first of all, it was right before he's going to start taking questions, and that changed the whole narrative. Most of us are all writing a story then to try to get it out about a setback and what that means, that Watson probably won't play in 2025 due to injury, which means they can collect insurance money. They don't have to, use a roster spot on him. He can stay on PUP or injury reserve and stuff like that. But he didn't give much more information, but just that little, he had a setback. You could almost see that they were, I'm not saying wishful thinking that he was injured, but I think that's probably good news to them, because now there's no question they cannot sit around and wait and plan on him for next year. They weren't going to anyway. They were going to work around him, but now they got good cover for it. And, I looked up his quote at the season ender last year, and he was having, he had shoulder surgery, which was kind of significant. No quarterback had ever had that. And so, but he said that he was confident he would return and be their starting quarterback. All they wanted to say now is, well, he's got to get healthy, and then we'll talk about it. I think Kevin Stefanski said that the day before several times, and I think he knew that there was some type of setback. So that gives you a nice answer without answering. Oh, we got to wait till he's healthy before we talk about anything. So since you brought up the injury, I think that was obviously convenient for him, but they don't disclose they don't come up with any injury information unless we ask about it.
Yeah, that is very unusual for them to volunteer that information. A couple of critical questions that I think you can answer quickly before we get out of here. TySox 15 on the subject of Greenbrier wants to know if there's another pickleball attorney from the media. You want to talk any smack since you're the champion, the reigning champion?
Oh, I've had a little smack talk to me, but they revere my athletic abilities. But I don't know what they'll do. I mean, it was a nice facility, and they had like a tennis racquetball thing, and they had a pickleball area in there.
Yeah.
They'll probably, if they do it, they'll probably do something, at this palatial training facility in Berea. But who knows? If not, I will go out, continue to be wearing the champion's belt.
Of course you will. And Brad Stainbrook, young fellow, apparently thinks that this program is to be used for betting purposes. Wants to know from you if the Cavs or Thunder are going to win tonight's game. Currently 49-48. Thunder over the Cavs in the second quarter. So help Mr. Steinbrook out. Program is not supposed to be used for betting purposes, but you're the legend. Who's going to win?
I think the Cavs will win.
There you
The
go.
thing is, they're playing so great. You kind of feel like you got to have a little bit of a skid somewhere, and you don't want to wait and do it at the playoffs,
Right.
But
right.
I mean, the Oklahoma's won 15 in a row, and Cleveland's won 10 in a row. I mean, it's kind of a fun thing. So I used to cover them. That was fun when they're winning. That's for fun for sure. So I'll be watching when we get off here, but I'll say the Cavs will pull it out. Donovan Mitchell hit a game winner.
There you go. Absolutely. Deadlock guarantee. Okay, there you go, Brad. And that is it for OBR Weekly for another week. We will be back here on next Wednesday night. We are going to stay here on Wednesday for a little bit. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for Core Home Fitness for sponsoring us, as always. And we will see you all again next Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Good night, everybody.
Thank you all. Thanks for finding us. We'll see you.